Hello friends, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Celebrity Sad Stories. Friends, on March 2nd, 1978, a strange incident took place that shocked the world. On March 2nd, in a cemetery in Switzerland, two people were digging up a grave. These people were stealing the corpse buried in this grave. Friends, this body belonged to Charlie Chaplin, one of the world's most famous comedians. Charlie Chaplin passed away at the age of 88. Who stole Charlie Chaplin's body, and why? What happened to his corpse after that? Before knowing all this, let's learn a little about Charlie Chaplin. Friends, Charlie Chaplin was born in England. He grew up in London, but his life was quite difficult. His family was living in extreme poverty. His father was mostly absent from home, and it was hard for his mother to run the household alone. This woman did not have a proper job. She would occasionally do nursing jobs and sometimes sew clothes. Friends, when Charlie Chaplin was 14 years old, his mother was sent to a mental asylum. This woman stayed in the mental asylum for 2 months. You can imagine what kind of impact this must have had on Charlie Chaplin's life. But Charlie Chaplin's life was about to change. Actually, Charlie Chaplin was very passionate about becoming an actor. He used to perform on stage in various places, and then when he was 19 years old, he was signed by a theater company. This company took Charlie Chaplin to America. Charlie Chaplin now performed on stage in America with this company, and this is where his career began. By 1914, Charlie Chaplin had become very famous because he had worked in a few films. Friends, after this, Charlie Chaplin started directing films himself. By 1918, Charlie Chaplin had become one of the most famous people in the world. Charlie Chaplin was also one of the world's best and highest-paid actors. Friends, in October 1977, Charlie Chaplin's health had deteriorated significantly. And then, on December 25, 1977, Charlie Chaplin was found dead in his home. He had suffered a stroke in his sleep. Charlie Chaplin was 88 years old. His death occurred in Switzerland because Charlie Chaplin had spent the last 25 years of his life in Switzerland. He lived in a Swiss village called Coursier-sur-Vevey. Actually, the US government had falsely accused him of having sympathies with communists, and because of that, his entry into America was banned, leading Charlie Chaplin to live in Switzerland. On December 27th, in accordance with Charlie Chaplin's will, his last rites were performed in a small ceremony. After this, Charlie Chaplin was buried in a cemetery in Switzerland. But friends, what was about to happen next shocked the entire world. Friends, 3 months later, during the night between March 1st and March 2nd, two men dressed in black clothes entered this cemetery. They were holding torches in their hands. They had 2 shovels. They were looking for Charlie Chaplin's grave in this cemetery. One of these men was from the European country of Bulgaria. He was 38 years old, and his name was Goncho Ganev. The second man was from Poland. He was 24 years old, and his name was Roman Wardas. Both of them were car mechanics, but at this time they were unemployed. The dream of these 2 men was to open a luxurious car repair shop, but for that they needed money, a lot of money. And that is why these 2 had come to steal Charlie Chaplin's corpse. Friends, with the help of torches in the darkness of the night, they located Charlie Chaplin's body. The coffin in which Charlie Chaplin was enclosed weighed 135 kilograms. With great difficulty, these 2 managed to pull the coffin out of the grave and put it in a car parked outside the cemetery. Friends, there was a cornfield outside this village. In this very place, alongside a river, these 2 dug a deep pit and hid Charlie Chaplin's coffin and his body. Friends, the next morning when people came to Charlie Chaplin's grave, they were completely shocked. The grave had been dug up, and Charlie Chaplin's body was missing. In no time, this news spread to every corner of the world. For instance, some people said that since Charlie Chaplin was from England, his body was stolen and taken to England to be buried there. But the reality was that his body had been stolen for ransom. Very soon, this was revealed when Charlie Chaplin's widow, Oona Chaplin, received a phone call. This call was made by Roman Wardas. He identified himself as Mr. Rochat, and said that if she wanted Charlie Chaplin's body back, she would have to pay a ransom of $600,000. Friends, Charlie Chaplin's wife refused to pay a single penny. She said that if her husband were alive, he wouldn't have paid a penny either. Anyway, after this, Oona Chaplin kept receiving phone calls, until a family lawyer of Charlie Chaplin started answering them. This man agreed to pay the ransom, but he asked to reduce the ransom amount. Meanwhile, the police were searching for these people, but for the time being, these two men were not being caught. However, when these two men saw that things were not working out, they threatened that Charlie Chaplin's children would be kidnapped. Friends, this story had become so famous that Charlie Chaplin's family started receiving fake calls as well. People would claim, "Charlie Chaplin's body is actually with us, give the money to us." The actual kidnappers, those two men, were now very worried about what was happening. Therefore, they took a picture of Charlie Chaplin's coffin and mailed it to Charlie Chaplin's family to prove that they were the real kidnappers. Friends, these two men made about 27 calls to Charlie Chaplin's family, and these very calls got them caught. The police started monitoring more than 200 phone booths in the area from which these people made the calls. One day, when these two called Charlie Chaplin's family, the family asked them to call back tomorrow at a specific time, saying that tomorrow they would talk about the ransom amount and hand over the money. But friends, this was a trap. Actually, the police had instructed them to do so. Friends, it was May 16, 1978, when the police were hiding near all the phone booths in that area at that exact time. And then, that man, Roman Wardas, came to a phone booth to make a call. The police arrested him immediately. He was talking to Charlie Chaplin's family at that very moment. Following this, the police caught the second kidnapper as well. These two had hidden Charlie Chaplin's body for 76 days. Friends, when the police asked them where they had hidden the body, they couldn't even remember the exact spot in that cornfield where Charlie Chaplin's body was hidden. Anyway, after this, Charlie Chaplin's body was buried once again. This time, his coffin was placed 2 meters deep inside concrete. A concrete slab was placed over it, so that no one could dig up the body again. In 2014, a film was also made on this entire incident called The Price of Fame. Anyway, now the question is, what happened to those two men? Friends, Roman Wardas was the mastermind behind this plan. This was the man who used to call Charlie Chaplin's family. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. His companion was sentenced to 18 months in prison, but his sentence was later suspended.